He called it the Anubis experiment, a perfectly anonymous name that hid its real purpose, which was to temporarily kill someone, with the insane idea of making contact with God himself. Surprisingly, succeeding was the worst outcome for this experiment. As the sole test subject of the experiment, I had to provide the answer everyone awaited. I only had 20 minutes. An eccentric doctor in the lab invented a new intravenous antimitotic drug. Something to prevent cell death. The words were meaningless to me. I knew nothing about it, but had all the goodwill in the world. It sounded crazy. Risking your life with no guarantee of survival. But after my diagnosis of Charcot's disease, the same affliction as Stephen Hawking, I was prepared for anything. My body was deteriorating rapidly, and I felt like I was losing myself more each day. I'd already lost the ability to walk. The doctor informed me that I would soon lose the ability to eat or breathe independently. I had many questions about life after death that I planned to answer with Dr. Muller's help. A man who looked more like Dr. Frankenstein than a real doctor. He appeared both eccentric and intelligent. Promised answers to my questions. In addition to having a huge check, I hurried to sign. Dr. Miller called me personally just hours after I signed up for the experiment. That was unheard of for a laboratory. He said I'd need to see a psychiatrist to assess my mental state and ensure I wasn't suicidal or a religious fanatic. On the experiment day, I was hooked up to so many electrodes that barely any skin was visible. Various machines I didn't recognize were set up around me. The beeping signaled that I was still alive. They needed to perform a craniotomy to open my skull and insert electrodes to study my brain activity during the experiment. Muller held a syringe containing a clear liquid. I found it funny because I thought he was going to use something scarier to kill me. A large device containing a green liquid filled with glowing bubbles or something similar. But no, it looked simple for the occasion. He warned me of intense pain and offered a final chance to reconsider. But I had already signed all the papers and was fully informed about the procedure. About the discomfort of rehabilitation and the time they would spend studying me thoroughly. So I didn't change my mind. Pain wasn't something that scared me, but dying without an answer terrified me. Go ahead, hurt me, and I say with a laugh, if I wanted to die, I wanted my last words to be funny. But no one else in the room seemed to share my opinion. He injected the substance into my arm without any further ceremony. The moment the liquid entered my veins, I felt like fire ants were swarming under my skin. A few seconds passed before my heart stopped. There was a moment of pain, and then nothing. People always talk about a bright, blinding white light during their near-death experience. Of a feeling of ecstatic peace and being reunited with loved ones who have passed away. That's not what happened to me at all. I just floated in an endless void, completely detached from the concept of time and space. I didn't exist, and I didn't want to return to my body. Minutes, days, years seemed to pass. And after an eternity in the void, I was pulled deeper into the beyond, heaven or hell. It didn't matter. I only knew that I had been drawn to the wrong side of death. The afterlife then took the form of a dimly lit room. I was standing, wearing the hospital gown in which I had died. My legs were working again. I could move on my own, as if my illness had never existed. I hadn't walked for over a year, but strangely, I wasn't any happier because of it. To be honest, I didn't feel any emotion. I simply existed inside that large room. Not scared, not curious, not angry, nothing. My bare feet felt wet as I walked forward. I couldn't tell what the floor was made of, but it was soft and it pulsed with every step I took. The lighting in the room was unusual. There was no identifiable source of light, but everything seemed to be illuminated in the same way, as if every surface had its own light. However, one spot shone brighter than the others. It was a shadow written on the ceiling. 415,162,341. As I moved forward, it became clear that the wall and the ceiling were getting narrower, to the point that at one moment, the room was no bigger than a shipping container. Amid the confusion, I overlooked the room's most peculiar decoration, a strange chair made of flesh and bone. On the chair, a young man was sitting. He was skin and bones, and it seemed like his life was hanging by a thread. He was connected to some kind of black wires that made strange movements, as if a mysterious force was emanating from his body. The whole place seemed to be feeding off the child. Being there, in front of such a weak representation of life, almost made me forget that I had just been killed. But even so, I couldn't feel any compassion for the weak child. Hello? I asked calmly. The child slowly raised his head toward me, his eyes frozen in a mix of fear and surprise. "How did you get here?" he asked, his voice trembling. I'm not really sure. I think I'm dead." And I was stammering. The words I was saying sounded unreal, even though they were coming out of my mouth. My memory was hazy. I could scarcely recall the experiment I participated in, and the lethal injection Mueller administered. It seemed more like a distant dream than a pivotal moment in my life. "Are you one of them?" he asked seriously. One of them interrupted me before I could finish, as if they already knew what I was going to say. "You shouldn't be here. They'll find us." He ripped out the wires to free himself from the chair, releasing a thick black liquid. He looked surprisingly agile for his physical condition. "We have to get out of here. If you manage to get here, it means they might have followed you."
"What? Wait, who are they? The creators?"
The boy grabbed my arm, his touch burning my skin. I could feel the sensation of burning flesh, yet I felt no pain. Strangely, his imprint looked nothing like the hand that had just touched me. Instead, there was a strange symbol that I couldn't identify. "Hurry up." We ran straight toward a wall. And as we got closer, it turned into a corridor, with thick black liquid flowing all along it. The narrow, damp corridor was pitch black, barely allowing an adult to crouch. With every step and every time I leaned against the wall to move forward, I could feel it beating in rhythm with my movements. After a brief jog, we entered a room identical to the last one. Except that the numbers on the ceiling said 4815, 162, 342. "We're safe here." "No, but it's going to buy us some time. But who exactly are we hiding from?" "Who are you?" The child seemed saddened by the question. "I'm sorry. I did my best to hide you, to hide myself. No, all of you, humanity." "What are you talking about?" The child appeared to be attentively listening to the events unfolding in the hallway we had just exited. The living wall was closing up, leaving no trace of the passage we had just taken. "Who are you?" The child grabbed my arm again in the same spot, without responding. Except this time, I could feel the burning sensation flowing through my veins and moving up to my neck. I felt a joy that I had never experienced in my life. And all of a sudden, I knew what he wanted to tell me. For a brief moment, I felt and knew everything. "You are God," I half-asked and half-stated. That's just one of the names given to me by my own creation. "But I'm not an immortal being as you seem to think." "Why do you look like a child?" "Perception, it's your mind that sees me this way." My mind was all over the place. I couldn't even grasp all the answers to each of the questions coming out of my mouth. "And as for heaven and hell, is that it? The afterlife?" The boy laughed, claiming there is no heaven or hell, calling it a human fantasy. "I created you because I thought you could become like me. But the creators had other plans for you. That's why I've been hiding you for so long." "What kind of plan?" "To them, you're nothing more than slaves. And as soon as you finish your time on Earth, you're used as spare parts, so that the creators can exist in a physical form. They are very powerful, but all they want is to live and feel, just like a human being. They need your energy, which you call the soul, and your remains. And fortunately, I managed to keep your energy hidden." "How so?" "By destroying it before it reached me. I don't know how you ended up here. Maybe it just wasn't your time, or maybe someone sent you here on purpose." But before I could continue my questioning, he interrupted me. "No more questions until you answer one of mine." That sentence disturbed me. What could God possibly have to ask someone as insignificant as me? "How did you get here?" There was an experiment and a doctor injected me with a drug that killed me temporarily." "But why did you agree to do that?" "Because he wanted me to find God. He wanted me to find you." "Poor fool. It was a terrible mistake. How did you not see it coming?" I saw rage and disappointment in his piercing eyes, like a burning fire searing my soul. The shame and loss of self-esteem it caused were unparalleled. I had no further questions. I felt like the information was being forced into my mind, an endless stream of knowledge occupying my thoughts. And even though I was dead, the pain I felt was very much alive. God revealed to me the faces of the creators and what they did to us after we died. They took what remained, our soul and flesh, and that allowed them to walk temporarily among us on the earth. disguised as friends, colleagues, politicians, and doctors with a taste for insane experiments. Don't tell them anything. It was there, the last words God spoke to me, he had barely finished saying them, that I felt like I was being scraped by something, pulling me through the void with incredible force. And before I could even realize what was happening, I woke up in terror in my own body, lying in a hospital bed. In the real world, Dr. Mueller exclaimed with joy when I opened my eyes, even though I hadn't been dead for very long. 19 minutes, to be exact. This experience put me into a coma for the 3 weeks that followed the injection. I didn't say anything. I kept quiet while trying to figure out if what I had seen wasn't just a lucid dream. They carried out all kinds of cognitive tests for several days after I woke up to make sure my brain wasn't failing. Because of the 19 minutes of death I had experienced, their machine had detected a lot of activity during that time, something that normally shouldn't happen in someone who is dead. Even after my health improved, they questioned me extensively for weeks. But I did as the child told me. I stayed silent. All I gave them were unimportant details. I lied to them and told them that I had seen a light, that I felt at peace. And all the other stuff I'd seen countless times on forums when people described their near-death experiences. Eventually, they gave up and let me go home, saying they'd stay in touch and telling me to call them if I remembered anything interesting. Until I got home, I couldn't decide whether it had all been a creation of my dying mind or if it had really happened. But one thing I had kept from my experience in the afterlife was my ability to walk. Currently, there is no cure for Charcot's disease. But somehow, my body had been healed, and I couldn't hide it for long. The miracle that had happened quickly attracted the attention of the media. So I decided to take the little money I had left and went on the run, hoping the creators wouldn't find me. The only way I can escape them is to die and let God destroy my soul. A year ago, I would have gladly killed myself to escape the torture they had in store for me. But now, death had become one of the most terrifying concepts. Because now, I'm sure of it, nothing awaits us on the other side.